He raised a toast to his real son while I held the knife to cut his birthday cake. My name is Camille Archer, 31 years old, born in a brick house with a maple out front and a father who used to call me Brightside. The maple is still there, its roots shouldering up slabs of old concrete. The nickname is not. On the night my father turned 60, a white tent bloomed across the lawn like a sudden wedding, strings of bulbs draped low enough to crown the bent heads of our neighbors. My stepmother, Lydia, directed the caterer with a smile that did not change when it landed on me. My father wore his navy blazer, the one with elbow patches I had stitched back on when I was 13. You give care to a thing and expect it to stay inside the seams. I stood by the cake because it was a job I could do. Keep the plates moving, steady my hands, smile. People came, kissed my cheek, used words like proud and lovely. I had been the kid who built vinegar volcanoes and read at the assembly. I had been the one to sit by Dad's drafting table while he sketched the porch he never got around to building. He used to tell me he'd make it wide enough for 2 rocking chairs, sunrise to the east, a place to forgive the day before it needed forgiving. I did not see the young man until the applause began. He was tall, in a fitted shirt that had the sheen of a new life. He looked like me in the sense that strangers sometimes do, a shape inside the shape of someone you almost know. My father lifted his hand, palm open, like a magician revealing a dove. This, Dad announced, voice carrying, is Aaron. My son. Lydia's fingers squeezed the stem of her glass as if daring it not to shatter. Someone whistled. I could feel the weight of people turning toward me, waiting for my face to break. Real son, Dad added, and there was laughter, the kind that doesn't check itself for casualties. I set the knife down so gently you might think I loved the table. My father had never used that phrase in my presence. He had always called me his only child, with a pride that warmed my throat when I repeated it. But things change. Men retire, hours open, old doors creak, and in the quiet a different story is rehearsed. Aaron shook hands, easy, graceful. He had the kind of confidence that belongs to someone who has always been received. He did not aim his smile at me, not exactly, but it touched me like a low tide touches a shore, claiming, inevitable. He took his place beside my father while I slid plates across linen and told myself to keep counting. 16, 17, 18. When Dad reached for the knife, I stepped back. His knuckles brushed mine, brief, familiar. My body remembered the weight of being lifted from a lake, the smell of his jacket after work, cedar and graphite. My mind tried to return those memories to a shelf where they could do no further damage, but they refused. Say a few words, someone called. My father cleared his throat. Every man wishes for a legacy. Sometimes life takes a path we don't expect. His eyes flicked to me and then away, a bird rejecting a windowsill. But truth is stubborn. Truth finds its way. I felt it then, the phrase truth is stubborn, pressing against me like a palm pushing me to the edge of the yard. In the distance, the maple lifted its black arms to the string lights, and I knew I would not sleep that night. I knew I would search for something I had never asked to see, and once seen, would never be able to unsee. The cake was sweet, the plates kept moving, and somewhere behind my ribs, a thin, clean line began to draw itself. The week after the party, the neighborhood learned to pronounce new names. Lydia sent a photo of my father and Aaron to the group chat I had been added to when Lydia married Dad. She captioned it, "Our boys." The message piled up with hearts, exclamation points, and congratulations. No one removed me from the thread, they allowed me to read it, which somehow felt worse. At the firm, I reviewed contracts with the same steady, careful pen I had used since my first internship. My boss noticed nothing, or pretended not to. I told myself to let the weather pass. But weather passes and shapes the land, that is the quiet arithmetic of time. I ate lunch at my desk, folded my napkin, answered my emails. The phone lit up with a number I knew by heart. I let it go to voicemail. Dad's voice, when I listened, was brief. "Cam, we should talk." It's not how it sounded. "Come by." He had said that after hard days when I was younger, come by, and there had always been stew on the stove, a movie queued up, a deck of cards. Now the words carried no promises, only an invitation to stand still while another arrow was nocked. I went by anyway. The house had grown even tidier under Lydia's hand, the clocks all synchronized, the rug squared perfectly to the angle of the walls. Lydia poured tea. She spoke of Aaron's mother, an old flame, the years, the possibility of a mistake that had gone uncorrected. She spoke gently, as if my pain were a skittish animal. "Your father is trying to make it right," she said. "Right is a large word," I replied, and she nodded like it was a season that would simply pass. Dad joined us, thinner than my memory, the navy blazer replaced by a cardigan. "Camille," he said, trying my full name, as if formality could support what his heart could not bear, "I should have told you sooner." "Why did you say, real son?" I asked. I kept my voice level. I learned long ago that rage is a fire that eats its own house first. He looked down, rubbed his brow. "I was trying to be," he stopped. "I don't know. I was wrong." He swallowed. "When you were born, your mother and I there were questions. It's complicated." He did not finish. In the silence, I could hear the hum of the refrigerator, the house exhaling. "Am I your daughter?" I asked, the word simple, the way a child frames a universe with a single yes or no. His eyes were wet. "You are my Camille," he said. It was not an answer and we both knew it. The anger that rose in me was not a flame, it was a tide, patient and dangerous. Lydia rested her hand on his wrist. She was not unkind. She was orchestrating order. I left with the same step I had used to enter. At home, I took the photo boxes from the closet. I spread my life across the floor, birthday hats, the broken handle of the mug I made him in second grade, Polaroids of Dad holding me up to the maple when I was too small to climb it. In one, his expression was so unguarded it made my throat ache. I set the photos in lines like evidence, though I had no case to make. I was trying to find the shape of my own life without someone else's story pressed over it. At night, I ran the city blocks until my lungs burned and my thoughts thinned. I slept beside the old quilt my mother had sewn, small blue stars stitched into a sky of faded white. She had left when I was 8, and grief had made me fluent in absence. But this was different. This was a subtraction that changed the value of everything that remained. On Sunday, I walked to the maple. I put my palm on the bark and felt the slow labor of growth. I thought of the phrase "truth is stubborn." If truth was stubborn, then so was I. I did not vow revenge. I vowed clarity. I vowed to live in a house without fog. Paternity is not a feeling. It is blood and numbers, alleles combining in patterns that do not care how a birthday speech sounds under a white tent. I made an appointment at a private lab across town, the kind of place where potted plants soften the corners of hard news. Dr. Priya Banerjee met me in a small consultation room. We were the same age, we had seen each other across community fundraisers and small-town openings, nodded over paper cups of coffee. I liked her because she did not apologize for science. "I'll be direct," I said. "I want a full analysis. If there is any way to anchor this to bedrock, I need it." She nodded. "We'll need samples. Yours. Your father's. If he declines, there are alternative markers using close relatives, but the strongest case is direct comparison." I exhaled the kind of laugh that isn't laughter. How very like the truth to need consent from the person avoiding it. "We can test you today," she said. "As for your father, sometimes the request is best framed as closure." Not accusation, but a path forward. On my way home, I stopped at a cafe and drafted a letter. Not an email, not a text. Paper bent the urgency into a calmer shape. I asked Dad to come with me, not for my sake only, but for his. I wrote that the map of our life had grown unreliable, and I wanted to fold a new one with him. I did not use the word real. He came. Lydia drove him. He kept his hands in his pockets, as if to keep them from reaching for me. Priya explained the procedure, gentle, competent. The swabs looked like nothing, and they were everything. Dad cracked a joke that died quietly. Lydia tucked hair behind her ear, a motion so practiced it seemed like a habit she had borrowed from someone else. When they left the room for a moment, Priya said, I can't tell you an outcome, only that when it comes, you'll still be you. Data can clear fog. It can't renovate a house. I'm ready, I said, though I was not. The waiting days took on the shimmer of fever. I worked, I ran, I managed the slow motions of a life. At night, I traced the blue stars on the quilt and let sleep take me like a careful nurse. I went to the maple and watched leaves turn their faces to the sun. The call came on a Thursday, late afternoon, the city threaded with low light. Come in, Priya said. Bring someone if you want. Or don't. I went alone. In her office, the blinds cut the light into bars and laid them across the desk like a cord. She placed the folder between us. Camille, she said, I have your results. The findings are clear. I thought of the white tent, the knife, the word real. I thought of the way Dad once taught me to sand a board, the grain revealing itself under my palm. Priya opened the folder and walked me through numbers as steady as a heartbeat. Biological relationship consistent with paternity, probability greater than 99.99%. There it was, the proof object I had not wanted, had not imagined needing. It sat like a quiet bell waiting to be struck. Priya slid a second document forward. You asked me to cross-check Aaron's sample. Lydia had convinced him to provide one, for the sake of the family, her text said to me, oddly tender. Priya's finger rested on a line. No biological relationship to Daniel Archer indicated. I closed my eyes. The room swayed and then steadied. The papers were cool under my fingertips. I was not elated. I was not vindicated. I was tired, and I was relieved, and I was sad for a boy who had been promised a name that did not belong to him. Priya folded her hands. What will you do? I placed the results back in the folder. Tell the truth. Quietly. I thought of Dad's birthday speech, the applause. I did not want a crowd. I wanted a table, a late afternoon, the soft dignity of chairs. I wanted the sound of a window open to the maple. I wanted to put the truth in my father's hands and step back to see what he would hold. I asked them to come on Sunday at 4. No tent, no guests, no speeches. I set out 3 glasses and a pitcher of water. The house was clean because it is my habit, not because I expected anything to be noticed. I wore a simple blue dress. Blue felt like the weather I needed. Lydia and Dad arrived together. He looked as if he had been speaking for days and had run out of words just before the car stopped. Lydia handed me a plate of lemon cookies as if that were what this moment needed. I took them and set them gently aside. Sit, I said, and we did, the way people do when they are about to attend their own history. I placed the folder on the table. The paper sounded like a small door closing. Before we begin, I said, I want to say the thing I know to be true regardless of what's in here. You, Dad, taught me to ride a bike. You showed up at the science fair with sawdust on your sleeves. You cried when I left for college and pretended it was hay fever. If I could stack those moments high enough, maybe I wouldn't need what's in this folder. But you said truth is stubborn. I find I agree. He swallowed. Camille. I held up a hand, gentle. Let the document speak first. Then we'll use fewer words. I opened the folder and turned the page so it faced him. Priya had added a summary letter, clear, concise, mercifully unadorned. I watched Dad's eyes move. His thumb slipped under the edge of the paper as if trying to lift it into a different outcome. Lydia read over his shoulder, one hand on the table like she might steady it. No performance. No gasping. A small sound left my father's throat, the kind you make when you try not to make a larger one. He turned the page, read the portion that named what Aaron was not to him. He shut his eyes. I'm sorry, Lydia said, quietly, to no one and everyone. I did not speak. I had thought I might narrate, might frame the truth so it landed softly, but the truth does not need a guide when the path is this straight. Dad placed both hands on the table. When he lifted his head, the years were visible, not as a failing but as a landscape he had finally stopped trying to redraw. I failed you, he said. Don't aim for poetry, I replied, my voice steady. Aim for accuracy. He nodded, a small, almost grateful motion. I failed you, he repeated. I let doubt grow like ivy on the house. I liked the way it looked from the street and didn't notice it was prying the windows apart. We sat with that. Outside, a car door thumped, a dog barked once. The ordinary world moved, indifferent and sheltering. I pushed the second document toward him, the one with Aaron's results. He didn't do this to me, I said. Neither did I do it to him. This is a mess adults made. Lydia's eyes softened in a way that surprised me. I thought I was helping him find steadiness, she said. I didn't see how my helping unsteadied you. What do you want me to do? Dad asked. Not a plea, not a negotiation. A question set on a table, waiting. Make room for the truth, I said. Not in a speech. In the daily parts. In the way you reach for my name. In the way you correct anyone who says otherwise. In the way you do not reach for me like something you might misplace again. He bowed his head. Yes. Call him, I added, nodding toward the second document. Tell Aaron you were wrong. Give him the dignity of clear ground, too. I will, he said. The words were simple and unadorned. They felt like water poured into a thirst. I closed the folder and slid it back to my side. I had imagined triumph, perhaps, when I first called Priya. I found instead a stillness that had its own kind of majesty. I stood, walked to the window, and cracked it open. The maple let fall a single leaf, which pressed itself against the screen before the wind took it. Dad rose. May I? He stopped. Camille. He tried the name like a vow. I nodded but did not step forward. We were both learning the new dimensions of this room. We did not hug. We did not pose for a picture. The truth sat between us like a lit candle. It did not require our breath to keep burning. Morning comes differently when the air has been cleared. It is not brighter, it is honest. The day after our meeting, I rose early and walked to the farmer's market with a canvas bag and no plan. The stalls were setting up. People laid out peaches like small suns. A child pointed at sunflowers taller than his mother. I bought eggs and honey and a bundle of thyme because it smelled like a hillside. I came home and cracked the window and cooked, the small good work of it soothing my hands. Dad called at noon. I spoke with him, he said, and by him we both knew he meant Aaron. It was a short call. He listened. He said he'd call me back after he'd had time to think. Good, I said. I did not ask for details. Some things are for people to carry in solitude until they choose otherwise. In the following weeks, the house learned a new rhythm. Dad came by once in the late afternoon. He wore no blazer, no cardigan, just a soft shirt that looked like it had finally surrendered to comfort. We sat on the stoop with coffee and no agenda. He told me about the neighbor's broken fence he had mended, about the way the light fell on the kitchen wall at sunset. Small talk, which is only small if you forget it holds a life in place. He did not call me bright side. He didn't need to. He called me Camille, and inside his voice was a steadiness that made the ground feel level. He corrected a distant cousin at a barbecue who asked after his new son. "Camille is my daughter," he said, and turned the conversation to the weather, the universal mercy of it. People heard him, and the word settled. I met Aaron for coffee once. I picked the kind of cafe where you can sit without being examined. He arrived on time, shoulders tight, the sheen of that first night gone. He looked like a person trying to carry 2 suitcases and deciding which one to set down. "I didn't ask for any of this," he said. "Neither did I replied, and we both smiled for the first time, a small human joke inside a room that had held too much seriousness. "I'll step back," he said finally. "But I want to keep knowing him, if that's possible. Not as a father. As a man I admire." He looked at me then, and there was no claim in it, only humility. "That seems fair," I said. "There is enough of him to go around, if he learns to share himself honestly." We shook hands, not as adversaries but as citizens of a complicated town. When he left, I sat for a while and watched the barista pull shots of espresso, each one a small ritual of heat and pressure. I felt grateful for skills that have nothing to do with blood. At home, I brought out my mother's quilt and spread it across the bed. I mended a loose stitch where 2 blue stars were trying to part ways. I threaded the needle with patient fingers and drew the seam together. The fabric did not become new, it became itself again, held. I began to spend Sundays in the yard, tending a tiny garden in mismatched pots. I planted thyme and rosemary and a small fig tree that looked like a boy with a bright idea. Every morning, I watered, not as a metaphor, but as a practice of staying. Dad came by to help me build a small cedar box for the figure. We measured twice, cut once, sanded the edges. The cedar released its soft clean scent. We didn't talk much. That was fine. The work carried its own conversation. Sometimes, when the light moved across the wall, I thought of the tent and the cake and the white word real. The word no longer had a place in my mouth. The real thing, I learned, is often the quiet thing. It is the coffee left for you on the counter without a note. It is the phone call that says, simply, "I'm here." One Saturday, Dad and I finally built the porch he had promised in pencil lines and someday talk. We set the posts true, leveled the joists, planked the surface by hand so we could feel each board lock into its neighbor. We left just enough space between them for rain to find the ground. 2 rocking chairs now face the east. Morning finds them, and the day arrives at a pace a heart can keep. If you walked by, you might not see anything remarkable. A father and daughter sitting in chairs that creak a little, a fig tree considering its next leaf, the maple lifting its steady, workmanlike shade. That is how quiet revenge looks when it is finished. Not as a toppled monument, but as a room in which no one lies. I still wake sometimes with questions that have more lineage than answers. When I do, I make tea and stand at the window and watch the early joggers pass. I set my palm to the glass and feel the cold truth of the world, which is this: we belong to each other best when we do not try to own each other at all. A final thing. People like endings. They want to know if he apologized, if he changed, if we healed. Yes. And also, we are still in the act of healing every day. The porch keeps teaching us how. The rocking chairs teach us how. The fig tree, in its stubborn optimism, teaches us how. I think of Priya's face in the lab, of the folder on my table, of the way paper can carry a life only to the threshold. The rest we must walk. If this story touched you, share your thoughts below. And subscribe for more stories of quiet revenge.